We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. And I always look forward to these shows. Our guest, Ed, is somebody who's been on many, many times and will be on many, many times in the future. And I look forward to talking to Ed because we spent our previous lives talking every day on the radio. So we've got a real sense of how each other thinks and how each other talks. And it makes the conversation so much easier. That said, Ed, you and I didn't always agree on everything,
No,
but we were still able to hash it out.
exactly. Well, I respect your intellect, though you may sometimes draw conclusions different from that which I make.
Absolutely.
I still respect the process. And overall, we recognize who the bad guys are,
Right.
and we want to tell people. That's what it comes down to. I don't think there's a single person that we disagree on as to which side of the line they're on.
No, 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 no. I wanted to bring something up because you made a statement before we got on, and it has to do with your apparel today.
Yes. Hmm.
I think you're making a couple of good points with it. So go ahead and tell us about your shirt today and your point of wearing it.
All right. Well, it's technically called a blouse, and most people will say, "Well, don't women wear blouses?" Yes, they do, but so do soldiers. This is a military blouse. It is the summer weight uniform that I wore when I was in the United States Army, serving in the intelligence area for 3 years, primarily in Korea, and also while I was in language school and so forth. Surprisingly, it still fits fairly well.
How is
And
that
it's,
possible?
I walk a lot. How about that? I don't know. Maybe it was loose back then and now it's more form fitting, but I wear it because I feel that we are at war. And also, when I joined the United States Army, I took an oath to oppose all enemies of the United States, foreign and domestic. We have foreign enemies: Russia, China, North Korea, to name just a few. We have some that are kind of in limbo, and then, we have some that are friends. But the fact is, we are at war internally, and we have been for a long time now. So I'm just recognizing that, and I'm reaffirming my oath to fight all enemies of my country, both foreign and domestic. Right now, we are witnessing on Capitol Hill the Republican senators kowtowing to this criminal that is now the president and basically filling the cabinet with garbage. I mean, literal garbage, literal human garbage. People that you would not want to occupy a room with for any amount of time because you would rapidly realize that they're either a psychopath or an idiot. That is who is going to be running the country because they reflect the president, who is also a psychopath and an idiot.
And
So
garbage.
yes, this is my declaration that I stand by my oath and I will continue to oppose those enemies.
Well, that's a good question. I've always wondered about this. If you become a politician or go into the service and you take an oath,
Mhm.
is that oath only for the time you're in that position, or is that in
No.
perpetuity?
I think most soldiers see it as binding. Now, we have organizations like the quote oath keepers who pervert that because, quite frankly, the oath keepers only, they're racist. They just want to, even though Terrio is Hispanic, we'll just call him a turncoat to his race. But,
Right.
but they are basically pushing the white conservative agenda. So they have already violated their oath. They have become a domestic enemy. But yeah, I think most soldiers who take that oath in good faith continue to hold it close.
You talk about the insurrectionists, the Terrios, and some of these other people that were released, 1,600 people that were given pardons. And since that time, there's been one that's been killed, a couple that have been arrested, one that's back in jail. I mean, who knew you release a bunch of violent insurrectionists and they might get in trouble again? I think there's a high recidivism rate amongst violent criminals. So we've allowed them to come out so they can reoffend. Um, do you think that these people out on the street now are going to start these little skirmishes? I don't think we're going to see one big skirmish at all, but do you think we're going to continue to see these kinds of problems from these people?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think by doing this, remember, Trump is following the Hitler playbook almost to a T. Hitler tried an insurrection. He was imprisoned. He was let out. And when he became chancellor, he freed all of the guys that worked with him. They became his brown shirts, his hitmen that he sent in, to destroy Jewish businesses, to attack politicians of the opposing stripe. They became his operatives, extra legal, so to speak, that had
Right.
their loyalty only to him. And he solidified that by essentially, I mean, some of these people had hefty sentences, 16, 20 years. They now owe him complete loyalty, and they're going to give it to him. And much like Henry II, when he wanted to get rid of Thomas A. Becket, the Bishop of Canterbury, he mused aloud, "Will no one free me from this meddlesome priest in the presence of his knights?" Well, three of them decided they'd been given the
Full
order
order.
to go kill Thomas Becket, which they did. He became a martyr and so forth, but he was still dead, and Henry was still king. And I don't put that kind of thing past Trump at all. I see all he has to do is in one of his speeches finger someone like the bishop who asked him to show mercy. He was essentially targeting her. If you'll notice that Pete Hegseth, one of his first actions as defense secretary, which will be mocked down through the ages if this republic survives, as one of the worst ever people to occupy the Secretary of Defense chair, the first thing he did was go after General Milley and remove his security detail, in essence saying, okay, open season on the general. I mean, that alone should disqualify him and have him thrown out of that role. Because he cannot be trusted. They are targeting these people. They want them assassinated, and that's what they're doing. Never, ever underestimate the virulence of Trump and his cronies. They believe that they are endorsed by God to kill anybody who stands against them. Believe me on that.
Absolutely. Well, and that's a point I was going to make. You were talking about that story from antiquity and what they did to Mark Milley uh, and any number of other people that he's taking the protection down from. It's basically sent out the hit squad. You know, I don't like Mark Milley. Now
Right.
he's not protected anymore. So do what God tells you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we know how what the reaction is because we saw it all those years where he was in court.
Yes.
He went after the judge's daughter, the judges, and the two women down in Georgia, and they got death threats. These throngs of red meat eating, mouth breathing pieces of shit just go on attack at the behest of Donald Trump. So what he did to Milley was essentially put out a hit on Mark Milley.
Exactly. That's exactly what he did. And he was just following basically Trump's orders. I don't know if Trump plays it close to the vest. Remember, Trump is mafia. I mean, he's not a wise guy. He's not a made man, but he's mafia adjacent because he worked in real estate in Manhattan and New Jersey. So
Right.
there's no way around it. He's tied in with the mob. His former attorney was a mob lawyer. And so he knows how to do it. You never say it. You never give the order. You just say, will no one take care of this meddlesome general?
You know, I look at Donald Trump. Everybody say he's mafia, and I don't. I'm not an expert on the mafia, but I've watched enough mafia movies to know um, that I don't think Donald Trump would have lasted very long in the mafia. I think he would have been taken for a ride and had somebody sitting in the back seat behind him with piano wire at some point. but I think Donald Trump is kind of a wannabe. He likes the attitude and the
Mhm.
power of the mafia, just like he likes what Xi does in China or Vladimir Putin does in Russia. He's a
Yeah.
wannabe. He sees that power and he wants to try to emulate it. He doesn't do a very good job. He's not really in the mob or the gang. I always refer to him as the leader of the Apple Dumpling Gang because they're fuck
Yeah.
ups on top of it.
Well, this is absolutely true. He's mafia adjacent. As you say, it's mafia envy. It's just, I think he was protected by his lawyer who, was tight with all
Cohen,
of
yeah.
the capos or the guys who run the individual mafia families and so forth. But I don't think you operate in the way that Trump did without having some fairly close ties there. Um, he is a
Well,
criminal. He's always been a
yeah.
criminal. He always will be a criminal.
Well, I think he was to the mob as he is to the Republicans, a
A
useful
useful
idiot.
idiot. Yes. See,
That's
we
that's
are
all
of
he
one
is.
mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And to Putin and to Kim Jong Un and to Xi and to the guy in Hungary, the guy, who came down to Mar-a-Lago. I can't think of his name at the moment, but the leader of Hungary. And these wannabe despots, wannabe Putins in Europe. He envies them. He follows their lead. He tries to do what they do. He's going to go after the press very soon. I mean, he doesn't have to because his cronies have bought most of it. But those
Right,
who
right.
stand against him, he will go after. He will try to shut down outlets like the ones like this one. He'll try to find a way to influence the carriers that will preclude these kinds of messages from getting through. So we have to keep doing that. And quite frankly, if I have to buy myself a Memeo machine and start stuffing mailboxes, I will do it. And
Yeah.
we must all do that. I was reminded in the back of my mind, something popped into my head watching the ice raids. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
this is the beginning, and these are the easy ones. I call it the Van Halen effect. Essentially, what Trump is doing here is viewing the United States as a large bowl of M&Ms, and he's picking out the brown
The
ones for
brown
now.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
but
that. I
rest
like that.
rest rest assured, he's going to be doing it. I pointed out online on a TikTok that there are millions, literally millions, of Asian and European and Canadian quote, undocumented individuals living in the United States who have been here for years. They simply come on a visa and overstay it and disappear. Nobody's looking for them, but they're here, right? They are not targeted. I've never seen ICE arrest an Asian. I've never seen them arrest someone from anywhere in Europe, and there are plenty of them here. And they, like their Hispanic alternatives, they come here, they blend in, they become part of the workforce. They work for wages. Their wages are taxed. They have to contribute to Social Security, but they're never able to claim those benefits. They're actually supporting Social Security and many other programs just because their tax money is doing it. Once they're gone, who will do that? No one. And this is the Republican plan, by the way, and it has been since Reagan, and that is to reduce revenue to the point that the country cannot afford to fund the social safety net. That is the simple plan, and they've been doing it by reducing taxes on the wealthy and corporations. When I pay more taxes than Amazon, that's probably an exaggeration, but it's not much. When I pay more taxes than any of the individuals who own those, probably, as many have noted, we are rapidly becoming a income tax free society above a certain level. And the
Right.
Trump tax plan that is in the works now, that those who have seen it and it's available, is that they will reduce taxes on the wealthy and they will raise taxes on us once again. I mean, I'm not rich, but I know that my taxes will go up just as they have during, people are complaining, well, Biden raised taxes. No, he did not. The tax plan that is currently in effect is the Republican and Trump plan that was passed during Trump's first term, which every 2 years raised the taxes of everybody who made below a certain level and left alone the taxes of those above. So we have been having a tax increase every 2 years since the Trump um, plan was passed. And of
No.
course, it will be renewed and made worse. And we will continue to pay taxes. We will continue. We will have to pay the tariffs that are going to be put in place. So we're all going to get a whole lot poorer until we take the country back. And that's why I'm in uniform.
Well, the thing about it is Donald Trump. People say he's evil. People say he's trying to tear down America. But he has one. There's one factor about Donald Trump that always trips him up. He's incompetent.
And an
He's
idiot.
stupid.
Yes.
I mean, take for example this whole thing of the memo going out about freezing federal funding. They didn't say what they were going to freeze. People presumed it was going to be all these things. They took it to court. The court said, "No, we're going to put that on hold for a little bit." And then Donald Trump says, "Oh, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that." And then he rescinds the memo. And then he starts getting heat for rescinding the memo. He says, "Well, the freeze isn't rescinded, just the memo's rescinded. But I didn't mean these particular areas or Section 8 or Medicaid." And then a document comes out that supposedly has a list of all the places that he was going to hit, and they were all the places he said he wasn't going to hit.
Yeah, it's
That's the
like
problem.
80 pages long
Yeah,
of
yeah.
cuts, of freezes, actually.
And that's why whatever Donald Trump tells you, you can't believe it. And I'm not going to cut those. And then they just do it anyway. That's what they're hoping to do, is a little complacency out of us. So, well, he said he's not going to do it, so we're good. And then goes ahead and does it. That's what people have to understand. You're being played every time he opens his fucking mouth.
Absolutely. And people don't realize that a lot of the programs they utilize are the ones that are being cut. Like for older people, Meals on Wheels, a good
Right.
example. And then child care subsidies and all sorts of things that people have come to rely on, that make their lives just a little bit easier. And the idea, of course, is to get rid of all of those. Every single thing, every single thing that benefits someone who is poor, who is a minority, who is a woman, is the target. They want the 1890s back, the 1880s and before, where rich white men get all the money and everybody else is forced to work for whatever they care to pay, if they care to pay at all. Because I guarantee you, they're going to keep trying to they're going to try to get rid of all these Hispanics, and then they're going to try to denaturalize not only the Hispanics, but anybody that they don't like, who is probably a recent immigrant, but who knows how far they're willing to go. This is the idea. This is to reduce the population, make it white, make them feel like part of the tribe, and then promise them heaven when they die. That's what it comes down to.
There's been an interesting awakening, though, and I wonder how long it's going to take to have an impact with these federal funding freezes. We saw a lot of red states and Donald Trump supporters starting to freak out. Wait a minute, that's going to affect me. It's surprising to me that they're just now realizing that some things are going to happen that might impact them. And I was talking to Old Soul about this yesterday, and she seems to think that these people will get scared about like this funding freeze and be angry, and the Republican goes, "Oh no, we better step back from this. Our base is starting to get mad." And then he turns it around, tells them something he wants to hear, whether it's true or not, and the people go, "Oh, okay, I'm still with you, Adani." When do you get the separation from people finally getting tired of being fucked with that support Donald Trump? Will that ever happen?
Uh, with some, I think certainly. A few, but not the majority, because the majority aren't listening. The majority heard Trump got reelected because a lot of them probably didn't bother to vote, even though they were running around in all of this Trump gear. They actually forgot to go in and cast a vote, or because they were felons, they weren't allowed to, or something. But
Right.
by and large, they are information free. They may listen to Fox News once in a while, but they don't sit still for it. They're out hunting and fishing and, doing whatever thing that gets them out of the house so they don't have to deal with the wives that they hate and the children that they despise. And they're out there, with their buddies drinking beer and shooting at their cooler or something like that, or
Yeah.
a case of beer, a brand they don't like. These people literally are idiots, and no, they're not going to. They're never going to wake up. They'll blame it. Some Republican will blame it all on the Democrats, and they'll buy it, and they'll fume and stomp and shoot and everything. But they will never understand that they have been backing the wrong horse their whole lives, and so did their parents and their parents before them. I'm going to put out this theory. The Civil War never ended. It just went underground. And the South, at the time of the Civil War, was intellectually, there was very little in the way of education. There was nothing in the way of unions. There was a lot in the way of religion that kowtowed to the rich. I mean, the Bible is full of stuff that was inserted to kowtow to the rich,
Right.
and give them a pass and so forth. And we know that. We know the ones that aren't actually part of the canon that were stuck in here and there by various kings and so forth. And the King James Version is by far the worst of all of that, and that's the one they love so much to quote. But no, they're not going to wake up. We just have to. I hope the people that will wake up are the thousands and thousands of Democrats who did not bother to vote, who thought,
Right.
oh, it's alarmist. We've been through this before. We got through Reagan. We got through Nixon. Reagan and Nixon were not good people, but they weren't psychopaths, not in the way Trump is. And they weren't stupid in the way that Trump is. And they weren't surrounded by evil people, totally evil people. They had their own, of course. Nixon had his Haldeman and Ehrlichman and others, and Reagan had his, you name it, Newt Gingrich was in there and others that were truly evil. But overall, a lot of their cabinet, a lot of the senators and so forth at that time were fairly reasonable people and worked across the aisle. We can see that. We can look at that, and we can see where that changed when they stopped working. And it really stopped with Newt Gingrich starting to primary people that he didn't like. And so now you have in both the House and the Senate just a collection of reprobates on the Republican side who can't be swayed. And the people who vote for them do not vote out of intellect. They do not vote out of faith. They do not look and see what these people's policies are and how they will affect them. They just believe because someone told them God was on the side of this party. And that is, quite frankly, appalling. And it's also blasphemy.
When you talk about Reagan and you talk about Nixon and the evil people in there, and there may be similarities between them and what's going on today. The difference I see is the degradation of the quality of the people, and they're all bad people. But back in the day with Nixon and Reagan, they understood the decorum of politics and trying to present a professional image and followed some rules and norms while they stepped over some. Now it's just like we got a room full of Ernest T. Basses from the hills of fucking Mayberry, these hillbillies that are evil but don't
Yeah.
understand how to even look like they're fucking normal.
Yeah, this is absolutely true, and also it had not yet become required of each politician that they try to destroy democracy and try to give all the power back to rich white men.
Right.
There were still some who thought this democracy thing was a pretty good idea. They might disagree on the level of taxation. They might disagree on this policy or that policy. And of course, they always hated welfare, and they always hated anything that allowed anybody to that in their eyes be lazy and still make money and still be given money, given food and so forth. They've always hated that, and which of course flies in the face of their professed Christianity.
Right, right.
And this is another thing. The not only does the Republican Party either have to be destroyed, which is my preference, or redone in such a way that it becomes again a party that wants to do the best for every citizen. That is the charge of any politician, really, is to do things so that every citizen benefits, not just a small minority at the top. The Republicans are now either bought or cudgeled or in some way brought into this cult that says we must restore all the power and all of the money, the economic security to rich white people, give them so much money that everybody else is reduced to working for pennies or whatever we choose to give them. That is that, and I say this again, that is what the Republican Party is dedicated to. It is dedicated to making most people poor and compliant and to whatever they want to do. And that is the modern Republican Party. And anyone who votes for that is quite, you might as well put a gun to your head and pull the trigger. It's just going to be slower.
Yeah, yeah. Well, since Donald Trump won, since he was inaugurated, um, there's been a lot of bad coming out of Donald Trump and the Republicans and all these efforts to do all these nefarious things against this country. Do you notice anything in the country with normal people that you feel good about as far as pushback or as far as maybe getting a foothold in the future to fight this thing off?
Not yet.
Okay.
I think a lot of people, including myself, were in shell shock for a couple of months there, and we're just starting to come out of it. I fault myself for taking the bait and thinking that the American people in general, a goodly portion of which I'm going to say half are idiots, just could not accept a woman as a president, and
I
certainly not
agree.
one who wasn't white. And the racism goes deep. And I was fooled to think that that maybe a majority of the country had come to the point where they no longer were ruled by their hatred of the other. But I'm wrong. They still are. I'm not going to say all Republicans, but a goodly portion of them. That is their base. That is what is always going to move them. This idea that people of color are the enemy and they're trying to take something away from them. It's like all of the economy is a big pie. So if they get a slice, then you get less. And that's of course not true, but it's still the way they look at it. And they really, American religion has been, in large part, has been reduced to two things: fear and hate. Fear of being punished in the afterlife if you don't kowtow to these modern prophets and apostles, and hate against anybody who disagrees with them and by extension with you. That is what religion has become: fear and hate. So far as most of the, I'm going to say, evangelical crowd.
You what people watch in the news from the mainstream media, and I know less people are watching the mainstream media, and I think that's a good thing. It's impossible to stay outraged about anything in this country because once something happens, then they're promoting something else. I'll give you an example. And I hate when this happens for any number of reasons. We had the plane crash in Washington,
Right.
D.C. Absolutely tragic. More than likely, a simple accident. Things like this happen. But then it becomes the focal point of every news story for days and days. And it's not that it's not justified or not important to do that, but in the background, this gives Donald Trump and the Republicans ability to pull stupid stuff off, like send memos to the FBI agents and people working in the FBI saying, you either got to resign or you're going to get fired. This is
Yeah.
going on in the background, and we're focused on this. You know, we're Everybody in this country has attention deficit. So whatever that shiny object is, that's what we're focused on. And a bunch of other bullshit is going on in the background that we're totally ignoring.
Absolutely. And can you ever remember any president prior to Trump who would take the occasion of going before the American people in light of a tragedy and then turning that political? Can you
No.
think of another president doing that? I personally think, I'm not sure how many people are aware that there was no head of the FAA because he resigned on January 20th, being pushed out because Elon Musk hated him for making SpaceX kowtow to safety regulations.
Right.
And then a bunches of other people were fired and everything right that first few days. I don't think that contributed really in any way to that particular accident, which is what I assume that it was. I know that the helicopter was way too high. I think
Yeah.
that's probably what happened. And it was human error on maybe more than one part. That's what I assume. But he was getting out ahead because he had made these moves to basically reduce the efficiency of the Federal Aviation Administration. And he didn't want to be called on it. So he goes out, he attacks first, and he starts blaming DEI. And the assumption with all of the Republicans, it's now the talking point, is that anything that forces someone to include, well, or diversify a workforce to include or anyone else beyond white men. You get this from Musk. Musk also believes that only white men are capable of technical and anything. Anybody else except white men are deficient in intellect. This is the official policy of the Trump administration. Make no mistake. If you're a person of color, I don't care what color, yellow, brown, red, you name it. If you're a person of color, in their eyes, you are not second class, you are no class.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely on target. Donald Trump is always trying to cover his ass, always trying to protect himself. The crash happens, and of course, like you say, he says it's a DEI thing, which is absolutely ridiculous, absolutely silly. But he's got to make noise because whether or not anything he did contributed to that crash, he sees an angle for people to blame him. And I did this on I somebody sent me this timeline, and I did it when I was talking to Old Soul, and I just want to read it to you because it says what you said, but it goes even deeper.
Okay.
January 20th, he fired the FAA director. He didn't have an acting director until about 3 hours after the crash. January 21st, he puts a hiring freeze on air traffic controllers. Probably have no bearing. January 22nd, this is the interesting one. January 22nd, he disbanded the Aviation Safety Advisory Board, which sounds so familiar to the COVID and the pandemic board that he did the very fucking same thing to. January
Exactly.
20th, he sent out the buyout retirement demand. But here's the most compelling thing. And this is why I would love to sit down with Donald Trump and say, you say it's DEI. Well, then explain to me this, that on January 29th, that midair crash was the first one in 16 years. No midair crash during Joe Biden's term, no crash during either of Barack Obama's terms, and the last term for George W. Bush. It never happened. It just all of a sudden happened when you were the president. And here's my theory on this. Without it even being intentional, I think Donald Trump is like fucking Ziggy. He's got a dark cloud.
Yep.
If something can get fucked up, it's going to get fucked up with Donald Trump. You get a little bit of an epidemic. It turns into a pandemic because of Donald Trump, either his input or just by his vibe that he creates, this darkness he creates. Same with the crash. And I think we're going to see this play out over and over again. Anything that could be bad will be magnified and worse because of the whole Donald Trump effect.
Yeah, and just picking up on that, in as you, that's bad enough. But he also said none of the None of the agencies that were associated with dealing with COVID and so forth, they're not allowed to send out any sort of medical advice or anything now.
Right.
So, should we get another pandemic, which we will, there are
Yeah.
several that are kind of circling that should be being looked at and dealt with before they get on these shores in a bad way, or a worse way, I should say. Um, People are not going to be warned. They're not going to trust. They're not going to, especially if Robert F. Kennedy is confirmed, which there's some teasing going on that a couple of Republicans may not vote for him, but I suspect that almost every, and Cash Patel the same way, I assume that every one of these bargain basement political hacks that he is putting into these secretary seats will be confirmed. Hegseth proved that. There
Yeah.
is no way he's qualified as a person or as a politician or as a military person. He's not qualified. He is the opposite of qualified. He is detrimental, and so is every other one. The ones that he wants to put in charge of national security and the FBI and so forth, the people that would investigate the kind of subterfuge that he's going to be dealing with and the kind of thing that he will be foisting on the American people. He got rid of the inspector generals for that way. No one who can possibly hold him back will stand. And I pity the American people who are going to be hurt, and I'll probably be one of them in some ways, by the skullduggery of these people.
Yeah. I mean, when Pete Hegseth first got put up, I said, no way he's going to get approved, get confirmed because he's just inept. He's a horrible human being. And I fell into the same trap I fell into the election. No way Kamala Harris is going to lose. He's the worst candidate in the history of time.
Yeah,
My fault is giving too much credit to people, whether it be the
right,
electorate or people in Congress. I gave him too
exactly.
much credit for being too intelligent and too decent. And unfortunately, I was wrong. A lot of us were wrong. These people aren't good people. They aren't smart people. And this is what we get for it.
No, they're balk. That's what it comes down to. Were I given the power, I would require the IRS to audit every congressperson, every secretary, everyone in charge of any sort of government finance to be audited, special audit every year, so they can explain why they can go from having a net worth of $250,000 to $12 million in 4 years on a salary of $174,000. And this is not rare. Show me a congressperson, either in the House or in the Senate, who is not fabulously wealthy compared to what they had when they started. You
Yeah.
won't find one. You won't.
Yeah. And the important thing is it's not just Republicans either.
No, no, it's
It's
all of them.
Democrats. I
Yeah.
heard I told the story to Old Soul, and this one irritates me more than anything. Jared Moskowitz. He's kind of the darling of the Democratic Party. He would go after the Republicans. He was a pit bull. He was okay. Jared Moskowitz is kind of wishy washy now on the red thing because Donald Trump is the president. Um, he voted again. He voted for shutting down TikTok. Okay, that's fine. If you want to shut down TikTok, go ahead. It was a dumb move, ultimately. But what gets me is Jared Moskowitz, this darling, immediately after he votes to take down TikTok, he invests in Meta.
And he wasn't the only one.
No, no, he wasn't the only one. He's the one that stands out the most because
Yeah.
he was the one that seemed like our ally the most.
Yep. And this is the way the game is played, and it's going to continue to be played that way. That you go into public service to get rich. That's what it comes down to. And it's the same here in my state. It's probably the same in every state where there are people who find a way to, they don't care what the salary is. They work for free. because the lobbyists will come to them and tell them ways that they can get rich if they just take this legislation from me and shepherd it through the House or the Senate or your agency. I mean, it's not just the elected officials. There's agency officials, the appointed people who are going to find. Do you think Pete Hegseth isn't going to be a millionaire when he leaves the Defense Department?
Yeah.
He will be if he's not already.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think there's anybody?
Elizabeth
People are under
Warren,
the
Bernie Sanders.
well, Bernie Sanders, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You anticipated my question. Is there
Yeah.
anybody in Congress that's not dirty? And I say this. I mean, we know the Democrats can be dirty
Mm-hmm.
because Robert Menendez just went to jail for 11 motherfucking years for selling influence and taking bribes. You know what's ironic? He went to jail for 11 years. Everything he did, Donald Trump has done, and he's fucking president. What's that
Exactly.
tell you about integrity?
I put up a TikTok yesterday that said Bob Menendez has been sentenced to 11 years in prison for bribery and other crimes, proving once and for all that no Democrat is above the law.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly right. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the thing that Bob Menendez, Democratic senator, goes to jail for 11 years for taking bribes. Ain't nobody on the Democratic side bitching. Ain't nobody saying it's a hoax, that it's fake news, that it's weaponized. Nobody's saying that. But anybody does anything on the Republican side, it's everybody's against us. We're totally innocent. And
Well,
it's a matter of integrity. We Democrats have some integrity, Republicans have zero.
yeah, who was the Hispanic drag queen who was um, uh, um, he was the house, and he was uh, his whole background was fake, and he
Oh
was
yeah, yeah, George Santos.
Santos. That's the word that wouldn't come to me.
When you said drag queen, I'm thinking, wow, I hope he's not insulting somebody. But no, George
No,
was a fucking drag
he
queen.
was a literal drag queen. Yes, no, and I have nothing against drag queens, by the way.
I
I
don't
have
either.
some friends who are drag queens, as a matter of fact, and they're great people. But they're fantastic people, as a matter of fact, and so are the trans people I know. So if you don't like those people, fuck you. Next.
Fuck
Uh,
you.
now, the nobody on the Republican side came out and said, even though it was obvious that Santos was unqualified to be in the job and probably needed to go to prison, not one Republican, not one, came out and said that. I'm saying right now, Bob Menendez needed to be in jail. I'm glad he's there.
Absolutely.
I don't
Absolutely.
care that he's a Democrat. He was a crook, okay? There have been others. I want them in jail. I want a Justice Department that goes after everybody, no matter how big they are, give them their day in court, and then if they're guilty, sentence them to prison, just like Bob Menendez.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that just it shows right there. If you're a Republican and you don't see that difference, fuck you.
Did you know that Bob Menendez, his junior, his son, is in Congress? He's in the House of Representatives. But I bet you didn't know that his daughter is a commentator on MSNBC, Alicia Menendez.
I did know that actually.
Did
My
you?
wife told me.
I'm watching her on TV, and she doesn't do a bad job. I'm thinking, how are you doing this? Dad's
Yeah.
going to jail for 11 years, and you got to smile and report this shit.
I
That's
got a
weird.
trust fund. No, no. I mean, I'm sure it's horrible for her, but she's not necessarily involved. But yet, here in Tennessee, and I want to talk about one aspect of something that just happened here that fries my grits, as they say. Um, Most of my representatives that on the federal level, the congressmen and senators and so forth, are so dirty. They are so dirty, dirty, dirty. I'm not sure. I don't know if any Democrats would be any better, but these people are so dirty. Harshbarger, um, 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 both the senators and probably every other congressperson I could find, they are in some way dirty. And it just makes me insane that these are the people representing this state. And the people, this is one of the poorest states in the country for most people. There are a
Right.
lot of really rich people down in Nashville, some of them country music stars, but most of them in business and so forth, like our current governor and the people who work for him. They're all, it's the billionaires club there as well in the Tennessee government. It drives me crazy that this is the case, but it has ever been. And until we reach a point where we can say they all got to go to jail if they're guilty, then we have nothing to stand on. We have no way to deal with it.
Yeah, it's you let people run wild, and it's eventually going to rot to the core. And I'm afraid I feel like government in general has rotted to a point where it's almost too far to be held. When we look at all the bad things that Donald Trump and the Republicans are attempting to do, I think one of the worst parts of this is that they create a disruption which sends ripples and creates problems that they weren't directly responsible for. Maybe they were. We're recording this on Friday afternoon, just afternoon, and this probably won't air till Sunday. But there was a story that came out on Ross Story that is kind of a ripple effect. And this one may not have as big effect as some other things, but I feel like this is what we're going to see. And this report says the San Francisco Chronicle reported Thursday that beginning this weekend, the San Carlos Airport, which lies along the final approach to San Francisco International Airport, will no longer have anyone manning its control tower. The resignations came after the Federal Aviation Administration's reassigned controllers' contracts to a firm that pays them less. So, in essence, because of what Donald Trump is doing and the way he's trying to go about things, these controllers got surprised and getting new contracts that pay them less. They say, fuck it, we quit. So that's going to cause all kinds of problems. When you don't have controllers in a fucking tower, you can't bring planes in or send them out. And this is the kind of thing, this disruption thing is going to spread all over this country in all different areas.
Oh, absolutely, it is. And quite frankly, the oligarchs, the tech boys, they love this because they would love to stick an AI program in that tower and let it handle the traffic. So you lose a plane once in a while, big deal. Who was on it? Nobody you cared about.
Yeah.
This is what they're going to do. I salute these guys who and girls, I assume, women who resigned, who said, "Screw you! No, I'm not working for that. There's a shortage in my field. I can go anywhere." Or maybe they just decided to suck it up and said, "I can get another job, but I'm not going to take this. I'm not going to endure this level of stress," and it is a stressful job, and this level of technical expertise that I trained for, I'm not going to work for less just because you want to pay me less. And that's what it comes down to. Not that they can't afford it, it's just they want to pay less. And that is the same with all of the tech guys and really with all corporations now, and probably with businesses in general. They just want to be able to pay less so they can make more profit. That's what it comes down to. And people are going to have to step up. They're going to have to step up and say, the line ends here. Our ancestors did it. People died in Colorado. The militia opened up on people at a Ford strike and murdered men, women, and children. In Minneapolis, it was a truckers' strike, and the police gunned down the strikers. It happened all over the country, and labor leaders were branded communist and crucified, literally. This stuff happened, and it's hushed up. It's hushed up because it does not conform with this, oh, aren't we great namby-pamby history that we're taught, that you were taught, that I was
Right.
taught,
Right.
that I had to unlearn. They call it CRT. That's one of the big jokes, by the way, that I only heard once and nobody has brought it up again. Trump banned CRT in the military. Unfortunately, what he banned was combat readiness training.
Yeah.
That was the CRT they had. This shows you just how stupid not only he is, but the people who work for him. But no, this is the time for courage. This is the time to stand up. And yes, you may get knocked down. Yes, you may die. But If enough people do it, we win. That's how this country started. That's how we survived the Civil War and 2 world wars. It's because people stepped up and sacrificed themselves. And if you're not willing to do that, in my mind, you're not an American. You can rename everything in the world America, and it doesn't mean jack shit. Because number one, America is the first name of an Italian who never made it to this country. He just wrote a good book. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's ridiculous anyway. America has no particular meaning. So to change Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, it's meaningless and it's stupid. And Google, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah. That particularly annoyed me. It's one thing for Donald Trump to say this is silly, stupid shit, and then Google puts it on their navigations, changes Mount Denali to Mount McKinley and Gulf of Mexico to Gulf America. I mean, under normal circumstances, it would just be laughable. It would
Yes.
be embarrassing until you see the CEO of Google at the inauguration. The level of sycophancy and just bending a knee blatantly. They don't care how stupid it looks. They're willing to do it to make an extra buck.
That's exactly right. And it is these people who are willing to take a knee when you are that rich, when you have that many resources. Why would you not say, oh, by the way, I'm changing my citizenship to Canadian. I'll be in Toronto. Go fuck yourself.
Right.
I mean, Google is too well ingrained in so many other things that if they pushed back as a group, Trump could do nothing.
Right. Well, I don't even use Google. Google is ingrained as far as search engine.
Yeah.
Everybody uses Google. You got to Google this or Google that or Google Maps. I said, fuck it, just as a protest. You know what I use now to search shit? Deep Seek. I'll use the
Okay.
Chinese motherfucking app because I trust them more than I trust Republicans in this country.
Well, you
Because
probably should.
China may be working against us, but they're not trying to destroy us from inside.
No, no, we're doing that on our own, quite frankly. And, I believe it was Khrushchev, the guy who was in charge of Russia at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, who was at least had enough sense not to start World War III and to
Right.
de-escalate at the right time. He said we'll destroy you from inside, and they've been working on that ever since, nudging it this way, just a little bit. And let's get clear up one thing right now. Russia is not a communist nation.
Right.
Russia is a kleptocracy. It's run by criminals. And that is essentially what we have just become. Now, it isn't solidified yet. We can still fight back, but that's where we're headed. We're heading to it's a kakistocracy, really, which is government by the worst possible. But at this point, but it's trying to become what Russia is, which is a kleptocracy, where the criminals at the top get everything and everybody else is a peasant.
Right. Right. Um, and the problem with it, the problem, if it was America fighting against this horde of criminals trying to take over, I'd feel better about it. My problem is that seemingly a third or half of this country is on board with the fucking thing. You
Yeah,
can tell them they want to start a dictatorship and they go, "Oh, I'm all in." They don't
yeah,
understand what a dictatorship is. They think, I was listening to somebody talk about the kinds of people that do this. And they said there's a certain kind of people where their only concern is to own the libtards, to
yeah,
prove they were right and that you were wrong.
yeah.
And my God, that's so fucking ignorant. I will be wrong. I'll accept being wrong just so I can make you look wrong. That is the stupidest fucking strategy to life I could ever imagine.
Well, you know what it is. I noticed this a few years ago, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, maybe not on this particular broadcast or podcast, but it all goes back to the schoolyard. And you remember that bully kid who whatever he said was true, and he would
Yeah,
fight, even though you knew that two plus two was four, he wanted it to be five, and he would fight you or whatever, and his
right,
toadies would go along with it. I mean,
right.
the most savage place ever is not in the forest. It's not on the plains. It's the schoolyard.
Yeah.
I survived it. I remember, and I survived it by cultivating large friends and being able to run fast. But it was pretty much out there on the playground. It was no man's land. It was the frontier. You had to learn to survive, and you had to keep an eye around you, behind you all the time, or have somebody watching your back all the time because it could be brutal. Well, that's what America has become. It's become a giant schoolyard again, and the biggest bully is now in charge.
You're absolutely right. And I think the greatest lesson I ever learned about bullies was, in fact, on a schoolyard.
Yeah.
When I was in grade school, I was just your average kid. I was a good kid. I was quiet, kind of quiet, and there were bullies from time to time. And after a point, I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm a nice kid, but I was a sizable kid, and I was strong, and I was athletic and stuff. So eventually, this one kid was bullying me, and this kid had all these followers, and he'd say something about me or somebody else, and they go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So I said, "All right, motherfucker, well, let's fight." And I was scared to death because I'd never really been in fights before. So I said, "I'll meet you in the schoolyard," literally in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
And a few of my friends are getting around me. Are you crazy? You going to do this? And we get out to the field, and the guy doesn't show.
Hmm.
I go, what the fuck's going on? So a bunch of his friends are getting pissed. They come out, grab this guy, and drag him out to the field. I go, all right, let's do it. I didn't know if I was going to win this thing, but I could see in his eyes he was nervous. Even though he was the bully, now he was nervous because I was calling him out. And I was angry at this point because he put upon me and a lot of other kids. And I was just at a point, fuck it. I don't care what happens. So he comes out and he's standing there and he's clearly scared and he won't engage. So I just said, fuck it. I whomped the shit out of him. And because he wouldn't fight back because he thought I would beat him up more, which is probably true. But all of a sudden, the tide turned. Everybody supported this guy. Everybody thought he was right. And now everybody thought he was a coward. He never came back from that. And then I had people trying to follow me. I go, don't fucking do that. I don't like you. You didn't like me. I don't like you. I just want to be left alone. I just want to be not picked on. And that one act, that stupid little act, I never got picked on again in that
Hmm.
school ever. And and the point of it is that's how simple it is, the situation we're in. If you stand up and push back, more than likely you'll win, and it will change the tone of how people see things. That's why I'm so upset about the Democrats going, well, we're just going to be nice guys. No, you got to slap the fucking taste out of their mouth. You got to make a point.
Yeah, exactly. I will have to say this: I was disappointed at the reaction to Trump at um, Jimmy Carter's funeral. I
Yeah,
understand. I understand that there are gentlemanly things that you do and so forth, but and somebody had to sit next to Trump. Let's face it, and maybe Obama took the bullet. I don't know, but I'm sorry, I can't be cordial with madmen, psychopaths, people who bullies, essentially bullies. I will never be cordial to a bully.
yeah.
Never again. I mean, I survived the playground and I probably accommodated a few bullies along the way, but no more. I learned a long time ago, and you can quote this. I think I came up with this, but you never know. Maybe I heard it somewhere, that pain fades, shame doesn't.
Right,
So
right,
uh, act as if acted on your best instincts so that you don't have to go through the recrimination of later of saying I shoulda means nothing.
right.
Okay, act while you can. You may get a black eye, your nose may get blooded, you may get knocked to the pavement and kicked around, but and I'm using that metaphorically. I'm not encouraging anyone to be violent, but you must act on your principles always, or you will regret it, and possibly you will regret it in a very direct way.
The biggest argument I get in with my wife is if I'm walking into a situation where there's going to be a Trump-a-fuck, okay?
Yeah,
And she'll say, don't talk about politics. And I'm not going to talk about politics. I talk about politics all day right here and on TikTok and all that. I don't need to talk about it at a fucking party.
right.
But I said to my wife, I said, if a Trump-a-fuck walks up to me and says something categorically untrue or stupid, I can't be held responsible for responding.
Right.
You don't bring it to my face and say this shit and expect me to say nothing. No, just don't say anything. It'll start trouble, and then my family or your family will be mad at us. Don't start anything. I said, honey, why are you warning me? Why isn't somebody warning that motherfucker to not say something stupid? Why do I have to be back off of these people if they're stupid? You understand? If I don't push back, they just get to keep doing what they're doing, and we end up with a fucked up president. And
Yeah.
I'd rather not have an argument. Okay. I have the one quality I've always had that a lot of people don't have that served me well. I don't mind a confrontation. A lot of people
Yeah.
want to avoid confrontations. You want a confrontation? I'm confident. No, I'll confront you. And it's not going to work out well for you if you're wrong. But that's what people do. We just got to be nice. No, we don't have to be nice. Just because we have differences in political opinions, okay, we can be cordial. We can be gentlemanly. We can shake hands and laugh and giggle. But if you're trying to fucking destroy the country, no, I'm not going to be friendly to you. In fact, if I was sitting next to Donald Trump, I would have said, do you smell that? What? It smells like shit. What is that, Donnie? I would have fucked with him. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been his buddy. And the other presidents, they didn't have a problem not engaging with the guy. If I'm Barack Obama and they say you're sitting next to Donald Trump, I'm saying I'm the former president. Don't put me next to Donald Trump. Put me in the fucking corner someplace. He had the option. He was trying to play nice. And I don't fault him for it, but it was the wrong fucking move.
Yeah. Let me give you an example here. Now, I have a guy I went to high school with, right? Matter of fact, senior year after graduation, he and I spent the rest of the night driving around and talking and so forth. So I knew him pretty well back then. Well, um, I went one way, he went another, and he eventually became apparently a minister. I don't know who which denomination he's a minister in, if he is actually ordained by a particular church. It possibly is something Church of God or something like that. But anyway, he went into the Kresge organization and ran a Kresge store till then he came back home and tried to start a business that failed. So what he did then was create an organization that it had it's basically a big thrift store where religious people would bring stuff in and give it to him, and then they would resell it, and then they would redistribute the money to the needy in theory. But so he built it to the point that he also gets a lot of government money. They run the Meals on Wheels here, for example, and some other
Right.
things, and they distribute government commodities and a lot of other stuff. So a lot of the money that comes through this organization comes from the government in one either state, local, or federal, right, to a tune of about $6 million a year. And he lives in one of the nicer houses in town, and he owns another one he's trying to sell for $700,000 right now. His
Which is a
family
lot in
home.
your town.
Oh, absolutely. He'll never get that. I mean, it needs a lot of updates, and it's been basically empty for about 20 years. So I don't know
Wow.
what shape it's in or anything. Anyway, it's been on the market for about a year now. Nobody's even looked at it, I think, because it would take a lot of money to redo it. Anyway, what I'm saying is he made a good decision business wise. He's obviously doing well. He lives in what is essentially a mansion, and he seems to eat pretty well and so forth. I'm not saying he's dishonest. I don't. Maybe he's not. I'm sure that they have to, go. The books have to be audited and so forth. I doubt very seriously that he realizes what this federal freeze would do to it,
Yeah.
because Meals on Wheels and so many other things that he is involved with would just not be there anymore. At any rate, I was at a local grocery store a while back after a reunion, and a high school reunion. He was there at the beginning and took some pictures and then left. He's generally one of these guys who doesn't like to mix with people, because I really do think he thinks we're all heathens. That
Probably.
he is some sort of apostle. He's tied in with Charlie Kirk's organization somehow or other.
Oh, then he's a piece of shit.
Right, exactly. On that level, anyway. But I know he went to some sort of seminar or something that Kirk's organization, I don't know that Charlie was there, but Turning Point USA, he and some other locals probably figuring out some way to undermine something. But at any rate, after the reunion, some people sent me an email saying, how are you feeling? Because a lot of people at that reunion got COVID. And there were several people there who got COVID. Well, I got really pissed off about it, but I happened to bump into this guy at local Food City. Because he had been there, I asked him, have you heard that a lot of people got COVID at the reunion? He says, oh, I don't care. Ivermectin will knock that out in 3 days. So I stood there for a second. I said, that's not true. There's never been any study that showed that ivermectin did anything for COVID. It's great for certain river things that you get in Africa, and it's great for deworming horses. But no, it doesn't do anything for COVID, and there's never been any study that does. I said, tell me you're vaccinated at least. He said, oh, no, I'm not putting that stuff in my body. And I said, I won't say his name, but I said, you have some prominence in this community, and you speak to us to a certain group of people that if you're telling them this, you are serving them poorly. And I used an old evangelical term because I used to be one. I said, you're guilty of false teaching, because you're teaching political crap that has absolutely nothing to do with religion. And he started to say something about it. Well, I had it and I survived it. And I just waved him off and walked away, because I didn't want to, because I was getting to the point where it was going to be something more than just words.
I'm guessing you're not getting invited to the local bridge club.
No.
Yeah, they don't want to. I have this theory: if you are in a business to help the needy, help the poor, if you are in the business of running a religion, and you're a multimillionaire, somehow you're a fucking criminal.
Yeah, I think you're right. Mostly.
I mean, it's if I'm running something to help the needy and I'm living excessively, maybe I should live normally and use that excessive money to help the fucking needy.
Yeah, I mean, who decides his salary? Who decides how much he takes? Does he have a board? I'm not sure. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how that works. He was saying that the books were open and anybody could look at them, but I don't know. I really don't. It's fairly easy to cook books, especially when you're dealing in a commodity that nobody's really checking on. People are bringing in stuff, and he has two shops. He has the big one, which is mostly junk that nobody would want, but across the street he has designer stuff that people give that go for a higher price. And
Sounds like Goodwill.
Yeah, well, pretty much. It's like Goodwill, but it's his own. It's different. It's not affiliated.
Bob's Goodwill. Come on
Yeah,
in, buy
pretty
our
much.
shit. I mean, Goodwill is another example of it. I've had occasion to go out to Goodwill because sometimes you can get some decent prices on some things when you don't have as much money as you normally or you do when you get older. But I was in a Goodwill recently, and I'm looking at prices on clothes that are used that are similar to the prices you would have bought them new at Target. I'm going,
Yeah,
you motherfuckers. I've been in business. And when you're in business, you have expenditures. You have
yeah,
you have maybe a brick and mortar, and you've got to pay for the products you sell. And then you've got to increase them to make a little profit on it. These motherfuckers get it for free and they
Yeah.
sell it for retail fucking prices.
Right. And their, I know their CEO makes over $1 million a year, and it's considerably more than a million, by the way. So how is this a charity?
It's not a charity. It's just, I
Yeah.
mean, what
How do you
really is a
justify
charity
that?
these days?
Yeah. How do you justify a salary of that level? I mean, is it like he's on the phone every minute talking to every affiliate across the country and he's giving them some advice or something? No, he's sitting in a chair occupying an office that where he essentially probably does not a damn thing.
You said you were an evangelical, and I always had this
Yeah.
question. When we watch evangelicals now, they everything they do, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, is the antithesis of what the Bible tells you or what God is supposed to have said or Jesus. Um, these evangelicals, are they so jaded that they actually believe that they're right and they're right with God in the things they do? Or do they understand that they're criminals and they just use this as a shield? I,
There were
I don't know.
some, uh, well, I don't know. Finish your thought there because I got your
No,
answer here.
I'm just saying they claim to be evangelicals, claim to be of God, and they dictate these things that are the antithesis of what the Bible teaches. Do they believe they're right and somehow they have a different interpretation of the Bible? Or do they know they're fucking criminals and they just use it as a weapon?
Yes and no. There are
Okay.
some that they're just flat out they're there to make money and they're to get as much as they possibly can and to loot as many people to give them money. Anybody who's doing the prosperity gospel, who says God wants you to be a millionaire, and the way to do that, show your faith by sending money to this ministry, they would call it. So if you give 10% of your income, that's usually what they go for. Or if you're more generous, the more you give, the more you will receive. And they never do, of course, unless
Right.
it's coincidence of some sort. I happened to happen on one time where, tell me your blessings, and somebody said, I just got a job at Home Depot. I prayed for. Boom. I mean, this is the level
Yeah.
of what God's doing for them, right? Giving them a job at Home Depot, while these guys are sending, whatever they can scrape up to these morons. Well, they're not morons, obviously. They're pretty sharp. Joel Osteen, certainly. Any of these who are saying that you will be rewarded materially if you give money to me, they're nothing but shysters. They're nothing but criminals. Absolutely. The further you go down, the less true that is. Now, when I was an evangelical, I was actually in the Lutheran church, a Lutheran evangelical church, but I came from a very rural Baptist um, background. And when I was a kid, the message there was there are rich people and they probably aren't going to heaven because they're getting what they're getting their reward here. But if you follow the gospels, do whatever, you will, and you keep your nose clean, when you die you go to heaven and then you get your reward. That was the message. Okay. Then this prosperity gospel came along, but then you had guys like Jerry Falwell and others, some international even, and some Catholic, some Protestant, who started pushing this kind of thing called the new apostolic reformation, basically meaning forget all that Bible shit. Whatever we say is what God wants. And now they're
Right.
saying things like, we have to take control of the seven mountains, which is, the economy, the arts, the military, the government. We have to take control of these before Jesus can return. Which is, there's nothing in the Bible that says that, but they say, well, this is new prophecy. We're new prophets. We're new apostles. So what we say now is what matters, not what that guy Jesus said. I mean, that's weak shit, and
That's
some of them
woke.
actually, that's woke crap. This love everybody. No, you love people like you. You love the other saints. You don't love these brown people. We can never let brown people in our church. I mean, think about it. The biggest indictment against the white churches in America is that there are black churches, that they
Yeah.
are separate. The most segregated hour of the week is 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. Certainly in the
Yeah.
South, probably everywhere. And there are
Yeah.
congregations who blend. Of course, there are. And there are really great people who are Christians. But mostly, I'm seeing Christ thrown out of the church. I'm seeing what he said being poo pooed and looked down on and called weak when it's right in your face.
Yeah. Whether you believe in the Bible or not, I think the Bible is being treated much like the Constitution. It's being perverted. People
Yes,
are interpreting it differently, and not even differently, totally wrong. They'll
yes.
take anything. It's uh, like the Second Amendment and all this stuff. They say, but this word means this. They will do anything to make it sound like what they believe.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating when I talk to religious people. People say, "Are you religious?" I say, "Well, I believe in a higher power. I believe in God. I believe in a lot of things like that. I do not believe in religion." And they say, "What do you mean?" They think they're the same, and they're not the same. I see religion
Mm.
as an organization of people, nor regular people, tainted people that are using the concept of God and whatever you want to call that, and organizing it so they can find ways to gain power and make money. And to me, that's beside the point. And it's gotten to the point where, like we said, people think they always refer to Jesus, but then everything Jesus did is woke. They talk about the prosperity gospel, but funny, all the things I've read about Jesus and the apostles, none of the motherfuckers were rich. No,
No,
they
as a
were
matter of
poor as
fact,
shit.
in Acts, which, because I wasn't an evangelical for 5 years and I have a background in fundamentalist religion, I know a lot about the Bible because I was around it growing
Yeah,
up. I will have to say this. Initially, I was not. It was probably fourth grade before I started going to Sunday school and then church and so forth. So I wasn't indoctrinated from the beginning, and that gave me a healthy skepticism on a lot of it. Okay, and a lot of it is simply dogma and tradition. It has really nothing to do with what's in the Bible. It's what and especially in this area of the country where there were very few seminaries, if any, and so it was learning on the job. Whatever came into your head, and Pastor Charlie over in the other pasture over there came up with something you might but generally speaking these are not deep theological minds who are preaching. Okay, it's what they know, it's what they've heard, and they echo one another. And I'll tell you another story in a minute, but my point being that religion and Christianity have very little in common with each other. The moment the Romans said, okay, this is the state religion, it stopped being what it was originally.
right.
If you read in Acts, the book of Acts, the early Christians were essentially socialist. They had all of their money together and they gave to each. Each person put in according to what they had. Each person took out according to their need, which is exactly what Karl Marx basically said communism is, right? So they were very much socialist in the beginning. But then when the Romans decided we can tailor this religion to give us more control over the hoi polloi and so forth. So that's what they started to do, and government and religion became entwined. And the rest of the quote dark ages stem from that point, where the church was in charge of all the social crap. And no, Galileo, you cannot tell people that the sun is the center of the solar system. It has to be the earth. You
Right.
recant or we're going to kill you, right? The church was doing this kind of king, and the king's over here going to do whatever you want as long as you tell them, I'm the guy God likes, which is what they did.
Yeah.
And they're still doing it. That is what the evangelical church is doing now with Trump. They're endorsing him so that he will support them.
Right. You said you had a story.
Oh yeah, when I got into radio, my first job was in Waterloo, Iowa, at a little big band station. They did big band and nostalgia and that stuff, right? And then, I
Cutting
learned a lot.
edge.
Yes, exactly. It's like music of your life, but homegrown version, right? Well, that
Right.
lasted 3 months, and the place went under. So here I am stuck in Waterloo, Iowa. I've got Mike Cronforce back at Brown Institute looking for a job for me somewhere else. But I get a phone call. This guy says, um, "You've been recommended to us to be program director. We're buying this station, and we're a local church. And are you interested?" And well, I was just coming out of the evangelical thing, so I said, "Sure." I knew a lot about Christian music. I knew a lot about gospel and all of that. And I said, "Well, for the short term, it's probably a good fit, and I needed a job, so I took it." And they wanted to use an all volunteer staff, so I'd train all these people, and they wanted to be commercial. So I taught him how to do commercials and all of this stuff. And the guy who ran it, I'm going to say his name, is Michael Facciani. And he was really just really enchanted by these prosperity gospel guys, and he was echoing what they had to say. And the guy could sing too. I mean, he sang really well. So he had this traveling ministry, but now he latched on to. He had a carpet cleaning business on the side, and then he preached too, and then he went around and did these ministry things and sang and so forth. So he bought the station, or he got a lease on it. And his so he was around a lot, and he invited this guy who came in, who was associated with the guy down in Texas, who's not the really weird one, who looks almost demonic. I can't remember his
Oh
name.
yeah. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
You know who you mean, but he brought him in, and so he brought this guy in to preach at a revival or something. I forget what it was, and this guy wanted to go play golf. And Facciani played golf too, and so did one of their other minions. They invited me to come along. I said, "I don't golf, but I'll drive the cart if you want." So I went with them, and I listened to their conversation. And it was almost like two business guys talking about how do you get the congregation to back you on something that they probably don't want to do. And this guy was saying, "Did you hear what so and so, this other guy they knew, has been preaching? Well, I don't know if I'm going to go that way or not. What do you think?" So it was very much a business kind of thing they were talking about. It had nothing to do that I could tell about saving souls or doing anything that
No.
benefited the larger people. It was to build this organization, and quite frankly, to get rich from it.
But the
Um,
guy you're talking about is Kenneth Copeland, who
that's
was a
him.
fucking absolute weirdo. And
Yep.
I have to admit, there was a period of time when I was younger, I would turn on these preachers, and I understand how they convince people that they are who they are, because some of them are really fucking good,
Oh,
good
they're like
talkers.
carnival barkers.
They
They're
are,
great at it.
and I would bet you, and I'm not even going to suggest being as good as those guys are. I would bet you that somebody like you, or even somebody like me, if we went the way of religion, we could pull a crowd because we understand how to talk to people
Yeah.
and how to react to their reactions and get people wound up.
Yep.
That's all it is. It's an ability to 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 sway a crowd. And a lot of people can do that. And these guys that do this, I watched them and I'm going, God, this is entertaining. I don't know what the fuck they're saying. I don't believe anything they're saying, but it's how they're saying, the cadence, the way they put things together. It's truly almost hypnotizing. It's almost hypnotizing to these people who watch it. And if you get somebody that's below average intelligence, it doesn't take long to suck them in.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And I watched it happen with these people giving money that they couldn't afford to keep this thing going. And I was
Right.
eventually allowed to, as the guy, we're going to let you collect unemployment because we're going to go all volunteer. After I left, it lasted 3 months, and But
Well,
Faccione is still out there. He's back to doing the traveling thing. But even after that, it was an AM radio station, and they were all going religion or something at the time, and uh, he just
well,
couldn't get.
we know how radio went with, like the AM. So when FM came in, there were a lot of radio stations that made money simply by taking payments from different organizations all around the country to run their recorded
Oh yeah. Hmm.
programs. They didn't hire anybody. They just
No.
charge people for time, and these people would take time on any radio station, shitty or not. And you'd run these religious fucking tapes, and they were horrible.
Yeah, across the field from the radio station I worked, which was a daylighter AM, there was this giant complex that had once been a TV radio place, and the TV was all gone and everything, and that's all they did. They blasted all the way to the Canadian border on these tapes. There was a guy who worked there. I met him. He would do stuff for me on occasion, technically, and that's all he did all day was switch tapes
Yeah,
all day.
yeah, it's
No news, nothing else. Just tape after tape, back to back to back to back.
and a 10-second ID every hour. You
Yeah,
had to do that.
you
You
had to
had to
do
do
that. And if there was a storm or something, you had to, put on a storm warning thing.
right. Well, where do you think it goes with the evangelicals now? They got Donald Trump in. They got the Republican Party. They got Roe v. Wade overturned. They got all this going. Now Donald Trump is free to run amok, and we know Donald Trump fucks up. Is there ever a point where the evangelicals go, "Oh wait, that's too fucking far"?
No, and we know that by Germany. We know that Hitler gets in with the endorsement of the Christians in Germany. There were very few who were against him. Once he started killing the Jews and the Romani and the gays and all of these others, it's a few of the others started to protest. A few did. They went to prison, of course, and were killed too. But no, they never really repudiated. You can't tell me that the German people ever really repudiated Hitler. They were taken in, and their young men as young as 12 were in the military there at the end, fighting at the end. I encourage everyone, if you have not seen it, to see the film Jojo Rabbit. I think the title's actually a little longer than that, but Jojo Rabbit will help you find it. And this is a story of a little boy, and it's um, I'm going to say almost fantasy in a way, because Adolf
Yeah,
Hitler is a character in it who appears to this little boy. He's his best friend because basically this is what it's about: the seduction of the innocent the by the Nazis, right? And not just children, but everybody. But that's what happened. They were taken in, right? And so this is what Jojo Rabbit's about. Watch it, and you will get a real clear idea of. But I think because art always does it better than being didactic. Okay, find Jojo Rabbit, watch it, and I think you will see it's tragic. It's horrible in a way. But at the same time, I think it gives you a vision not only of what went on in Germany, but what's going on here right now. Right
yeah.
now.
I think I watched JoJo. I know I watched JoJo Rabbit, and it's weird. It's kind of quirky, not the kind of movie I'd normally like, but it was compelling. And after the movie, I didn't feel great.
Right.
I didn't feel like I was redeemed or inspired about anything. I'm going, fuck. And the problem was that it was very true, and that's what was so troubling.
Yeah. And it had one of the most jarring moments in it that I have experienced in probably 10 years in cinema. And I'm not talking about like an alien where the alien jumps out or something like that. This is much more subtle than that. And you may not remember, but it has to do with a pair of green shoes.
I don't remember that.
The mother wears them,
Okay.
and they serve as an identifier later on.
Oh, that's right. It's kind of a symbolic thing, right?
Yeah, it's. I'm not going to ruin it for anybody, but it
Okay.
is. It be prepared. It's going to knock the wind out of you.
Wow. So check out Jojo Rabbit. Um, we've been going on for a while, so I'm going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. I want people to know how to find you. A lot of people have found you. If you haven't as yet, you really need to. So, Ed, where can they find you besides the street corner?
At Holler Troll on TikTok for now. I also have a presence on YouTube that I'm just beginning, but it's essentially the same thing. At Holler Troll, we'll get you there. You
I
know,
will get. I
go
will
ahead.
give you a. I'll give you a hint on something else to do, because I was encouraged to try it. I didn't want to try it, but I kept listening, and didn't want to try it. But Substack,
Okay.
I've been very surprised by Substack. You can upload up to 5 minute videos, which is usually plenty.
Yeah.
I always thought Substack was just kind of a text type of platform. And I guess it was at first, people writing
Yeah.
articles and all that stuff. And I got, that's not really me. I don't want to write. I'm too lazy for that. So I started posting videos there. And I didn't think much of it. I just put the TikToks up there that I put out. And I don't know fucking how, but right now I have 5,600 people following me on Substack, and I just started a short time ago. The
Cool.
interesting thing too about it is, doesn't matter how many you have, you can do a live on Substack. It's a much more, it's a much more friendly community, like-minded community, and I think the kind of things you do, because people have to understand, he doesn't sit and talk politics like I do typically. He tells stories. He's a great storyteller. He talks about history. He talks about a lot of things. I always liken him to what I remember of Paul Harvey back in the day, because you got that kind of down home voice and you're telling these stories with a point. I don't always tell stories with a point, but that's my charm. But Ed does, and it's very entertaining to listen to. And this is coming from a guy who sat in a room that was in another part of town talking to Ed every fucking day for 27 years.
Yeah.
So if I still find him entertaining, I guarantee you'll find him entertaining.
And vice versa. And that's why this podcast works well between us is because, quite frankly, we're used to the give and take.
Yeah, exactly. The give and take. So if you need to find Ed at Holler Troll, HOLLERTROLL, find him on TikTok, find him on YouTube, and I'm telling you, check out Substack.
I will do that.
I'm even on Blue Sky. I'm just give you a tip on Blue Sky. You only got a minute video time for a video on there, which I cannot do. So all
Mhm.
I do is put a link to my YouTube videos on Blue Sky. And I got a following there too. If I'm going to get a following there, you're going to get a following there.
Yeah. Well, I'll try that. I was doing reels for a while where you could only do like 3 minutes or something like that. But it just got to be too much dealing with all of it. And I like to not have that constraint of, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, whatever. I want to
Yeah.
be able to tell the story the best way to tell it. And, maybe I go on too long sometimes, but at the same time, I like to make it worth the listen, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you and I spent many years writing commercials and doing commercials and trying to fit it within 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's so many, and it was always tough to make it very creative when you were limited to that time constraint and have to. I always love doing that. Some salesman would come to me with a sheet of paper about this big
Yeah.
with two words on it and go, give me 360s on that. And then
Yep.
have to write something. Then you could get a little creative, but mostly you had to jam too much stuff into 30 seconds or 60 seconds. And all you could say is, for all your insurance needs, come on
Yeah.
out to, for all your automotive needs, come out to. And they were just dull as shit. So this gives Ed a chance to be creative, and it's worth the listen.
Yeah, that's a battle I fought for many years where they would come to me and say, check out their Yellow Page article, see what you can get out of it. Give me 560s, and it's you go to the Yellow Page article and it's one slogan and the hours they're open. So then I would bust my butt, do something creative. Well, I don't know if I can take them this, and I go, take it to them, let them turn it down. They loved it. Well, of course they did. you
Well,
know.
or there was always the ones that you'd write some copy. They go, I don't know if I like it. maybe if I read it myself, some uneducated, inarticulate motherfucker that owns some business wants to read it himself because he wants to be a star. And that always goes poorly.
Yeah, I remember when I worked in a southern Minnesota city I won't name. The guy always, I forget the local supermarket, the big one. It wasn't Food City, or maybe it was a Hy-Vee. This guy would go around to take a the salesman would give him a tape recorder, and he would go to each of the departments and find out what the specials were. And him and Haw, and of course they didn't know how to talk or anything like that. It was a jumbled mess, and they would bring me back like an 8-minute tape, and I'm supposed to get like 560s out of it, right? And so
Yeah.
I spend 4 hours editing this thing every week because this guy thinks he's a star, and I made him sound at least better than he was because I would. But this was the Blade era, by the way. There was no electronic editing. You did it
Right,
with a
right.
block and a razor blade and tape and taped it back together.
I got pretty proficient at that because I
Oh
did a
yeah,
lot of it.
me
I,
too.
and then of course there were the places where you had the jingles.
Yes,
You had this
the
grocery
middle.
store jingle, and you had 20 seconds in the middle, and they gave you 90 seconds a copy. And somehow you had to
Yeah,
try to fit it. So you hit the beginning and the end of the, it was just fucking, I, I, I thought I was so cool because I was in radio, and I look back at it and I go, that was so unserious. What the fuck was I doing?
and what really pissed you off, of course, was the salesman was getting a commission on all of that, was 4 times your salary.
Right, right, exactly, exactly.
All he
I
had to
only
do
had,
was go and pick up copy and bring it back to you. And he was making, I don't know, 50 grand a year, and you're making 10.
I was, when I went to Arizona, the guy who owned the station didn't have any radio experience. He was like 30 years old. He got it on, somebody wanted to get out of it. He bought the lease on it, and he hired a bunch of people, none of which had any radio experience.
Yeah.
So at 19, I go down there and I'm the seasoned veteran. Okay. A lot of these guys are selling ads and they can't do the ads. So they go, Mike, will you do the ads? I go, I'm not doing all these fucking ads. So they cut me a deal. And this sounds ridiculous. Now, keep in mind, when I'm working at this place, I'm making 600 a month.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting paid. That's my salary for being on the air. Um, they had me do sports because nobody else could do sports, and I kind of could. So they paid me $25 a game. And commercials, I had to do my own commercials, but then I'd have to do everybody else's commercials too. And the deal was this: if I got handed copy and read the commercial, they paid me $5. If I had to write the copy and read the commercial, they gave me $10. Put it this way, it got so bad I made more money making commercials than I did for doing my fucking shift.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
Well, you started, I think you actually started in radio before I did. But I think my first job was around 800 a month.
Well, that
That
was
was
good money
Waterloo.
back in the day.
Yeah, but when I moved on to Minnesota City, and I stayed there 3 years, and by the end I was making actual decent money in a way. But I'd gotten up to a program director status, and so that took a little bit more because I had other duties, like scheduling and stuff like that. But I was still writing most of the commercials and recording a goodly portion of them.
I had some titles too. I was a sports director. I was a news director. Somehow that never figured into me getting paid more money. I just got more shit to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that title,
fucking
that's it.
radio.
Well, we're going to make you music director, Ed. Great. Does that pay anything else? No.
No, doesn't pay anything else. All right, well, check out Ed on Holler Troll. Ed, thank you for coming on. It's always a great pleasure to sit down and talk to you. This is when we talk. As long as we've known each other, it's a great opportunity to sit and talk about the important shit of the day. And I appreciate you coming on.
You bet. I always love it. Take care.
All right. For those of you listening, thanks for doing that, taking the time. I hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.